Now that you've had time to digest the Gifford's account of what transpired that night in the Mojave, are there alternate explanations?
The CIA has a way of looking at things called Occam's razor. And Occam's razor says basically that the simplest, most direct answer is usually the correct one, the one with the least number of suppositions. And if you apply that to the story the Giffords have told, and the science that's gone behind it to look into what they were thinking, what happened, and what others objectively, how they view it, the simplest answer and the best answer is what they say happened to them really happened. An alternate explanation that I came up with as a possibility, as a secondary possibility, is that they were in the middle, trapped in the middle of a desert warfare exercise. So there are three explanations that you can look at, and probably more, and that's the exciting and incredible thing about this story. You know, the reader becomes part and parcel. You tell me what you think happened. I'm just reporting the event. But the first explanation, and the one I would subscribe to, and the medical doctors subscribe, the scientists subscribe to, is that this really and truly was a case of alien abduction on a massive scale. The other is that it was a giant misunderstanding, a misinterpretation of events that sort of coalesced into something that appeared to be something other than it was, i.e., it was a military exercise, desert warfare exercise, using high-tech instrumentation, chemistries, hallucinogens, drugs, etc., weapons that average people would never have seen. And they were trapped in the middle of it. The last, and these things are all as credible as you think they are, was that this was a religious experience with serious overtones about man's place in the world vis-a-vis the devil and God. One explanation would be that it was a desert warfare exercise, that the hovercraft they saw were not UFOs, but vehicles, transport vehicles used in the desert. So maybe these would be a diameter of 15 feet, circular, etc., capable of high speeds in a very rough desert terrain. The red eyes that they saw could be explained by night vision goggles. So military personnel with night vision goggles, one would see red eyes rushing toward them. Once in the camper, held Indian style, sitting Indian style with a shotgun in his hand, along with his wife, Tom Gifford talks about telepathy and talks about being surrounded by these beings, illuminated. Two explanations possible. One is maybe they were wearing gas masks, and maybe, as happened with the Red Guard in Iraq, Hussein's Red Guard in Iraq, hallucinogens, gases were spread to disorient the enemy. So if that's the case, the Giffords could be the victims of a massive misunderstanding. Now, equally fascinating to be captured by your own military and held there for hours on end. The anxiety, the level of torment, it must be incredible. That's one explanation. So far as the huge craft that hovered above them and the rest, and there's much more to this story, that's not so easy to explain away. Also, according to Dr. Annixter and Fatone, if they were hallucinating, they would not be sharing the same hallucinations. So while they were pinching themselves, and do you see this being? Do you see these? What describe them to me? What do you see this craft? How big would you say it was? Do you see these other beings? And there were a variation of beings culminating in another explanation. Because at the end of the story, Elise Gifford and Tom Gifford saw what they called a angelic being that sort of swirls down, and they called it the Comforter. Because at the end, when they all thought they were going crazy, about to have heart attacks, pulse racing, heart pounding, this last being comes down, a comforting being, an angelic presence. Telepathically, they hear, don't worry, this isn't forever. This will end. And then the chaos, out of the chaos, the mayhem that they were plunged into the middle of, things settle. And finally, they withdraw. They go to sleep, that's the missing time, and the huge craft above them disappears. I think that believers will be reaffirmed in their belief by the solid nature of this story. I think that those on the fence might easily be convinced. This puts me over to a side where I believe this is a real and true phenomenon. As for skeptics, I would say, buy the book. Look at what detail is there. And maybe they can come up with a counter explanation. But after reading the book, believer, people on the fence, or skeptic, to come up with an alternate explanation, that won't be so easy.